Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Conversational Pace. I feel like I say every episode is a special episode, but this one is unique. You'll notice that Finn's video box is bigger than mine, and that is because, well, he's my co-host. He's also the guest of the episode today because we are going to be taking everyone through Finn Melanson's Cocodona gear setup. For those who don't know, Finn is running the Cocodona 250 it starts on Monday, May 6th, correct? Is that right?
Monday, May 6th at 5 a.m. Pacific time.
Okay, yeah, and I'll absolutely include links to the tracker, the live stream, because Finn will be, GPSed up, and there will be a live stream, which we are intimately familiar with the Cocodona live stream because, well, we were on the broadcast for every single day of it last year, and it was awesome. And I don't know, Finn, what do you think? How much influence did the live stream last year have on you signing up for the race this year?
It was incredibly influential. I've actually found that anytime I spend significant time on the ground at a race, almost overnight, I'm converted. And so, my biggest recommendation to this audience is that if you don't want to do a race one day, do whatever you can to avoid that particular race because most of them will win your heart over. We spent a prolonged period of time because we were there for basically a week. We did a ton of training runs in the Flagstaff area, in the Grand Canyon, on the Arizona Trail, stuff like that. Yeah, it was very influential.
So I think what we'll do is we'll try and kind of stay on format from like beginning of the race to the end. There's also a little, we'll do a little bit on the mandatory gear. But I was reading through the athlete manual, and there's like mandatory gear. There's some mandatory gear that you have to have on you at all times, but then there's some mandatory gear for some sections of the course, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I don't know if you want to get into that right now, but I basically have a strategy where, and this is actually borrowing from the Mike McKnight playbook, where I'll take a compressible Ziploc bag. And for those more gear heavy requirement sections, I'll have all of those pieces in a compressible Ziploc. And at the aid station where that begins, I'll have my crew hand me that compressible Ziploc. I'll throw it in my pack. I'll do the section. The next time I see them and that sort of requirement ends, I'll pass them the Ziploc. And so we'll just keep doing that switch in and out throughout the race. And the benefit of that is I don't have to worry about where all the singular pieces are. They're all kind of stowed in this one single bag. And I'm in compliance at all times. So kudos to Mike McKnight for tinkering with that strategy over the first 3 years of Cocodona. I think it's a pretty sound one, and I'll be using it on race day.
Finn's announcing his newest sponsor, some like vacuum sealer company, food saver bags for the Cocodona 250. So this race is very dynamic in that you go through a ton of different like microclimates. Let's hear a little bit about like the start and, maybe what you might experience in the first day.
Yeah, I would say the first day of this race is widely regarded as the most consequential sections of terrain that you're going to go across. And it's also the most independent part of the race. And what I mean by that is, depending on how fast you're going, there's a strong chance that on day one, you might only see your crew one time. If you're towards the front of the race, you'll see them two, maybe three times. But for example, the first section of the race, you begin at Deep Canyon Ranch in Black Canyon City, the middle of the Black Canyon 100K course, and you proceed to start to climb into the Bradshaw Mountains. It's a 37-mile section without crew to the Crown King Saloon. You are climbing in altitude, but it's a very open section. You're getting just beat down by the sun. There's minimal water. And so there's pretty significant gear requirements. Like one of the big things is at a minimum, the Cocodona race requires you to carry at least 4 liters of water, but they highly suggest that it's more like 5 to 6. I'm a heavy sweater. I'll probably show you my backup pack, a Salomon Advanced Skin 12 liter in a moment. that just has sweat stains all over it from the Desert Rats 100K. I'm kind of sweating, no pun intended, just how much I'm going to need to carry, or if I bring a filter, draw from whatever available streams and sources there are along the way. But yeah, in a 250-mile race where you're already stressing about like, how does my mind react in multi-day? How does my body react in multi-day? Am I going to get along with my crew? Are my legs going to comply? There's like micro stresses along the way. And I would say that the first 30 to 40 of this race carry the biggest burden of like, can I get through this somewhat unscathed to do the remaining 210 miles?
There's definitely a lot of like, it's not even high risk, high reward. It's just like high risk for the reward of getting to go 200 more miles. Um, so you talked about, starting with like 5 to 6 liter capacity of water. I think that's a good spot to open up some of the gear. What pack are you starting with, and how are you carrying that much fluid?
Okay, this is great. This is something I was stressing about. There's actually a great YouTube video on the Aeroviper channel where the race director Steve Adderholt brings on Mike McKnight and Jeff Browning. Again, I'm probably going to be using Mike's name a lot in this episode because he's done the race 3 times. He's done some great trial and error about what works and what doesn't. He influenced me to get this Ultraspire Zygos 5.0 hydration pack. Of all the packs that I have surveyed that aren't really dipping too much into the through hiker ethos, this one has the best water carrying capacity that I could find. It's got a 2 liter standard camel reservoir stowed directly against the back. And then maybe for this audience, I don't know if it's come to market yet. I was actually able to contact Ultraspire to see if I could get my hands on prototypes, but to get to 4 liters from a reservoir type standpoint, I picked up these 1 liter collapsible bottles that they also make, and I'm going to stow those in the outer pouch here in the pack. So that's going to get me to 4 liters. And then I'm debating between bringing 2 more 500 milliliter collapsible soft flasks or even going like the handheld option. And I think I'm probably going to keep those latter 500 milliliter soft flasks always empty. And what I'll do with those is as I come across streams, I'll use this Catadine water filter to draw and just sip from those. So that's how I'm going to stay between, I think, 4 and 6 liters throughout those first 37 miles. There is one aid station about 8 miles in where you're strongly encouraged to top off everything. And then I think it's somewhere around mile 20. Someone's going to have to correct me. There's just a water station where you're allowed to get up to
Mhm.
1 liter extra. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised in retrospect if we do like a post race thing. We find that I drank 9 or 10 liters of fluid on this section just from drawing at the aid stations and picking up along the way.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention that it's usually pretty warm
Yep.
on the starting day too. I mean, I remember last year it was what, in the upper 80s, low 90s, even
Yep.
going up in altitude a bit, and like it's pretty exposed. So like consuming that much fluid is like totally fair statement. Those soft bottles with the mega long straws, that reminds me a lot of like what Zach Miller was doing at
Yeah.
UTMB this past year, because he was doing soft bottles and with like a straw. He took it even one step further, like squeezing the water through the drink tube back into his reservoir, so he like never had to take it out to fill it up. You have a little bit more luxury of time at Cocodona, but so are you gonna be looking like an octopus with, like, 4 different straws coming out by your mouth?
I think octopus is the perfect description. And I was just going to add, I don't know if Ultraspire planned this with the Zygos pack, but they actually have 3 little cutouts along sort of the neck of this vest that is perfect for bringing 3 straws through. So one from the 2 liter
Interesting.
reservoir and then two for each of these collapsible reservoirs. So really in their like lineup, I'm not trying to do an ad for Ultraspire because I also have a Salomon pack that I'm going to show you in a second. They've just built a pack that I think is perfect for just before the trade-off to like long distance through hiking type packs. From
Mhm.
a water carrying capacity standpoint, the one other thing I'll add is that and Sarah Ostaszewski told me this as I was on a phone call with her a couple weeks back about just pack strategy for this race.
2023 Cocodona 250
2023
women's
champion.
champion.
Just because it's a 250-mile race doesn't mean you want to get over fixated on these packs that contain all of your solutions to things that could go wrong. Like, you do want to prioritize being as light as possible when you can. So as soon as I get through that Crown King section, maybe more so once we get to Whiskey Row around mile 78, I probably will prioritize a totally different type of pack. I've got the Salomon Advanced Skin 12 pack that I used at Desert Rats. This pack, I'll probably just do the standard 2 collapsible 500 mil bottles in. And then in places where we have like 8 miles between aid stations or less, I might go to this S Lab Pulsar 3 vest, which, on a separate note, might be one of the best packs for Western states ever made. But I used this at Red Mountain, also used it at Antelope Island 50, and this is an awesome like fast pack.
Yeah, I remember seeing that that Pulsar pack. It was on Courtney DeWalter last year at Western States. It wasn't out yet, but if it works for her, probably works for you too.
Yeah.
Um, so do you know what like your apparel kit is going to look like for the start of the race? I mean, I know your clothes are going to change so much over the course of the race, but what are you going to start in to handle the hot weather of the opening miles?
So I was kind of inspired by Barack Obama and Steve Jobs here, because I know that that's a super weird thing to drop
Okay.
on a
Okay.
gear episode. But what's one thing that those two are have in common is they took the same sort of 3 articles of clothing, and they just bought like 36 pairs of all of them because they figured that it was too much of a brain strain to have to think about fashion on a day-to-day basis, and they would rather use that brain power towards whatever other, hard, complex problems they were trying to solve. They were trying to dedicate it to that. And so what I'm doing here is I bought like 4 pairs of the same shirt, 4 pairs of the same short. I have like 2 pairs of the same, wind jacket, waterproof jacket, running pants, etc. And I think like I just want to minimize decision making fatigue throughout this, and that's why I did multiples of everything. The first thing that I want to tell you about is this Fractel Legionnaire cap, which I'll just put on to kind of show you how ridiculous it is.
Did you wear that at Desert Rats
I wore it at Desert Rats. Maybe I'll just
yeah,
wear this the
okay.
rest of the episode
I
because I
think
just
I
need it.
think I saw some pictures and was like, "Oh yeah, Finn's going with the floppy hat."
But I tested this at Desert Rats a few weeks back. It works as advertised. These flaps come down to shoulder length. They do a great job of sort of 360-degree covering your neck from the sun and the heat. Every bit of sort of protection from the sun is needed on this Cocodona course. It's got this Polar Tech fabric, which is advertised as next to skin moisture management, which I agree with. It worked pretty well. Highly breathable, quick drying. It's got these like press studs
Oh, you're
under
able
the
to close it
chin,
up?
so you can close it up. And honestly, like what Jules was doing for me, my wife at Desert Rats, was I would close this up, and then she would actually put ice into the sides, kind of pressing up against my cheeks, and also on top of the hat here. So it's this underrated, especially if you tuck it in, super underrated ice storage system. So we're going to be doing a lot of ice at Cocodona, and I'm really excited about that. So this might be a fashion dilemma for some people, but if you don't care about how you look and you just want to focus on like
Dude,
beating the
it's a
sun.
Gorp Core statement piece right there. Do you think something like that will that also, like, keep you warm at night? Like, if it's, like, windy or chilly, like, you could just close it up and keep the ears, a little warm?
I hadn't even thought of that. Probably. Honestly, I might add it to the nighttime gear setup. Yeah, I hadn't thought about sort of like bringing this down to like block out wind, because yeah, you do get to some passes on this course at night where wind is just whipping through.
Mhm.
We've all been there where on a super windy mountain, like it's just going right through your ears and you're kind of going crazy. And you just have like, hearing loss for the next few hours. So
Which
I
was,
hadn't
like,
even thought of that.
the top of Eldon last year. I mean,
Exactly.
those it was, like, 50 plus mile an hour winds up there.
Exactly.
It was nuts.
Um, The other piece I want to tell you about are these Pearl Izumi arm sleeves. It's funny. So these came in the mail a couple days ago. I brought them out this morning on a photo shoot because Scott, my videographer, and I were trying to replicate like the Cocodona look for some content that's coming out. And it was pretty brisk. It was like mid 40s, and these things did their job. Like my arms were kind of freezing. Like you could feel the skin cooling effect. Obviously, there's like sun protection too, UPF 50. Um, the one thing that I don't have for you that I'm debating adding is also gloves, because I know that a
Mm.
lot of heat loss and heat mitigation can come from protecting your hands. So I might do something similar, like a Pearl Izumi glove, or like an outdoor research glove that has that similar cooling effect, UPF rating. But yeah, these are also, I think they look cool too. Like, and you can stuff ice in them. Like, as we know, like from a heat management standpoint, you can, at the top here, there's a pretty big, I'll call it an aperture, and you can get ice in there pretty good.
So
So
those are like strictly a arm cooling sleeve, like not warm at all.
exactly, they're not
Okay.
warm. No, in fact, if I
Okay.
wore those at night, it would be to my detriment. Like,
Gotcha.
my arms would get super cold. So if anyone thought like that kind of technology is BS, it's not.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
you probably actually have one of these because we received a package from Kevin Lara at the Western States show last year. But I'm bringing this rabbit buff with me to wear during the day. I love the stitching and the Velcro on this thing. Everything locks down pretty perfectly to hold ice without falling apart or leaking. Um, and yeah, I tested this out at Desert Rats, running not like super fast, but faster than Cocodona pace. Everything kind of held up, and ice stayed in there and didn't like bounce out as I
Mhm.
was striding. So um, it is a kind of a funky colorway. It's that like navy blue on lime green, which I don't know. It's sort of another statement piece, but I'm not out there to look fashionable. I'm
Yeah,
out
we're
there
about efficiency. I mean, gosh, we probably gave away a couple hundred of those last year at Western States.
to.
That was
um,
good. Sunglasses?
so I don't I have like a massive pile of gear around me. I don't have them on me, but the brand is called Sweet Protection. I have the Ronin RIG
Oh, I
Max
have a pair
version.
of sweet protection
Do you,
glasses too.
do you like them?
I do my marathon PRs in the ones they're like fat. Like
Okay.
they look like goggles just with sunglass arms.
I feel like you and Jimmy Elam are like long lost gear bros because Jimmy is also a sweet protection guy. He introed me to the brand. I also have the clear lenses that I'll transition to at nighttime. Honestly, the reason I got them, like, pretty stylish, but they just fit my face well. They rest on my nose pretty well. Other brands I've tried, I'm not going to name names. They just didn't.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
similar to shoes, it just came down to comfort for me, and
totally.
I'm going that route for
Yeah.
for
And
eyewear.
don't test this out, but, like, I'm pretty sure every single sweet protection lens is spec'd for, like, construction safety standards because they wanted, like, mountain biking and, like, snowboarding and skiing, like, you get a branch across the face, they wanted to protect you. So, if you hit the deck and, like, start falling, dude, just fall eyes first and you'll be okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, not to bring up Jules again, but she's super into power tools and DIY home projects. So I'll let her know that they have that value proposition as well, and maybe she'll use them as she's
Yeah.
using our miter saw the next time around.
Okay, but, like, let's absolutely definitely double check that before you just, like, give Jules some sunglasses as safety goggles. Um, poles.
Yes.
Starting you have poles with you the whole time?
Yeah, you and the whole time. That's a good question. So Sarah Ostaszewski, she is not a proponent of that. She's a proponent of using them selectively. I will definitely use them through Crown King. I will probably use them on the Mingus Mountain climb. We'll
Mhm.
probably use them on the Kasner climb. I'll probably use them on all the climbs, but running downhill and running some of the flats, I think
Yeah,
there's going to be enough aid safety.
the big section after, Sedona, like, you descend out of Sedona, and then you do a climb, but then it's flat for, like,
Yeah,
rolling for a pretty long time.
yeah.
That could be a section where you could go without them, assuming you're not, like, needing them to just stay upright.
I know, and honestly, that might be the reason why they're important, even on flat, is like helping me stay upright and just in the game.
Yeah,
But yeah,
posture.
I've got the LEKI FX.One super lights, very light pole. I do think weight matters in a race like this. Love the Shark system, the handhelds here, like optimal power transfer is kind of how they're advertised. It really is a pole built for trail running. I'm not really like dedicated to this brand. I also have a pair of like the kind of competitor black diamonds that I'll use as backup. Durability for me has been an issue on both brands, although I don't want to knock them because you and I were texting back and forth. You're probably right. I probably don't have the best technique when it comes to
You
using
go to the
poles.
you go to the arms too
Yeah,
much.
I think the ratio should be like 10% arms, 90% legs. I was
Yes.
probably doing like 70% arms, 30% legs, and I've just been snapping them. So, yeah, I'm glad that we had that texting exchange a couple weeks back because that might make these last for 4 years. We'll see.
Yep. Good,
Um,
good.
yeah.
Um, oh, that was one that's very important. and we'll get there because I know everyone wanting to know which shoes you're wearing. But before we get to shoes, what about socks?
Yeah, so these actually just came in the mail today. I yeah, socks darn tough. I'm using like their Trail Runner Micro Light ones that go up to sort of the calf. I just I'm picking darn tough because I have a through hiking background, and when I threw out to the Appalachian Trail back in 2014, I used darn tough. I did start using Injinjis with that Smartwool PhD sock layered on top of it, and that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. But it from like a ventilation standpoint, it was problematic. So I switched to just the single darn tough, and nothing changed. Like I didn't have any hot spots, didn't have any blisters, and other than well, there's a lot of factors that go into a 200, but I think for me, the biggest game changer is going to be foot care and how well they hold up and how comfortable they are, blister popping, Epsom salt bath, stuff like that. I think socks might be like the most valuable piece of gear in this whole thing. So I didn't want to F around. And I just have trusted these for multi day before. And I'm not going to, everyone tells you, Coach Brett, you probably tell your athletes, don't try anything totally brand new on race day, and I'm just not going to do that.
Yep, that's smart. And this is like totally depends on the person, but like, you gonna pre-lube your feet, or do you go au natural until something like starts to form, and then you like manage it, or are you gonna like just like mummy your feet with tape beforehand?
I'm gonna pre-lube everything. So I think, especially for those first, whatever it ends up being, 8 to 10 hours on course, it'll just be a lubing effort. Armpits, groin, nipples, feet. Like my feet are just gonna be, yeah, there's just gonna be like a thick coating of squirrel's nut butter on those feet that'll hopefully last me through that first section. And then, we might switch over to um, taping. I've had everybody in my crew read a book called Fixing Your Feet, so they're pretty up to speed, I think, on just how to do foot care. Because I watched that Sally McRae documentary a couple. It
Mm,
came out this year, and one of the big things she mentions in that movie is that there's EMTs at every single aid station, and they're all capable of working on your feet, but they don't think about the race at hand necessarily. They're really just focused on like correcting the problem. And I am willing to accept shortcuts that my crew might take to like kind of minimally fix the problem, get me somewhat comfortable and back on course. Because I don't want
mhm.
to spend, and we can talk about this later. I don't want to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes at an aid station if I can help it. Other than those like sleeping stations, I really want to be efficient.
Make sure your crew has a couple like real medical grade scalpels with them.
Ooh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
because we got one at Further, the Lululemon Further event when Leah started getting blisters. We were like, the first time she popped a blister, she popped it with like a staple that she found on the ground. We were like, this is effed up. Like, no, it
Yeah.
was pretty gnarly. But then they gave us a scalpel, and it was like a total game changer because they're just so sharp. You just like boop, and then like explodes. But yeah, and they're just like easy to sanitize and keep clean. But then also you just like don't have to worry about what are you going to pop blisters with, and like it's gonna work every time
Yeah.
because it doesn't hurt, you can't feel it, the skin's like dead or whatever. So I'm all for just making sure your crew has a couple scalpels with them. um
I've taken note. I'm gonna add that to our list.
yeah, plus like it's fun when the crew gets to be like scalpel. Okay, we got to talk about the shoes. This has been a theme of like most of our shoe reviews for the last few months of like what are you liking? What do you think's going to be the best at Cocodona? And I would love to hear your thoughts on like what you're going to start in and why.
Okay. So this comes as no surprise to you. I am going to be primarily rolling with the Salomon air quotations budget Genesis. I have used this for every single race in 2024, and I'm not going to change up the playbook now. The rationale for this is extremely simple. I think in a multi day environment, performance is secondary to how comfortable your foot is. Like you have to exalt comfort in a multi day setting, especially with your feet, especially with shoes. And you just need a shoe that fits your foot perfectly. And there's been a couple shoes that we've reviewed on this channel that were pretty darn good fits, and I'm going to bring a lot of them as backups. But in terms of overall fit, this is the ultimate for me. So um, I actually might start the race in the shoe that we've been reviewing that I've got like 200 miles
The
on.
old pair.
I might actually use the old pair for the Crown King section. That'll sort of be like the triumphant send off. Like, I just want to have an emotional experience. This guy
Yeah.
like changed my world, you know? So he deserves to take part in 2024 Cocodona. Like
Did
I
you
wouldn't
ever
have been either way.
did you ever think you would feel about if like feel so deeply about a shoe in like the same way you felt about the Ultra Duo?
Dude, that okay. I wasn't prepared to answer that question. I don't know. I have to think about that, but I hadn't felt this way since, yeah, like June of 2021 when I was able to order the last pair of those from the outlet store in Orem, Utah, and I'm feeling it again in April of 2024. And yeah, I don't know when this shoe's time is going to come. I actually genuinely don't know how long this shoe is going to last and what's going to wear first. I can't remember what we said during our review episode, but it's going to get a proper burial too. This will be one of the shoes that gets a proper burial. Like I'm not just going to throw it in the trash. Like there's
Yeah.
going to be sort of a ceremony.
Too
But anyway,
bad you can't tie the laces together and throw them over a telephone line because it's Solomon's dang quick lacing.
um, but yeah, I also I reached out to Salomon. I said, "Hey, loved the shoe. Here's the link to our review." And shout out Erin Cooper there. She actually sent me 3 more pairs of this that I'm gonna like lightly break in over the next couple days. So I'll have those backups. And then we talked about this a couple months ago, but I'm gonna bring the Brooks Caldera 7 with me. I
Mhm.
just think it's a good stability, like long haul trucker shoe. I'll bring the Speedland GS Tam. I haven't worn that since Cocodona of last year. Like literally the pair that I'm gonna
Mm.
bring, I haven't worn in a year. So maybe I'll do some walking around in that. But I loved that shoe from a fit standpoint. And then, dude, surprise of this episode,
Yeah, let's see it. What do you got? What do you got? Oh, the Zagama
it's
2
gonna
that
be a
we
backup.
just got in.
It's gonna be a backup, dude.
Dude, isn't it comfortable?
It's super comfortable.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a backup. Maybe we'll wait until we review it to kind of talk more about it. But I just think
yeah.
it's you called it maybe already your favorite shoe of 2024 or one of them.
Yeah, I mean, and I already know that because I got to participate in a couple Nike wear tests for the Zagama 2 last year. So, like, I've already run, like, 4 or 500 miles across a couple different pairs of Zagama 2s, and this production one is not any different than the pairs that I was, wear testing, so, like, I already know how much I'm gonna like it, but I'm definitely still gonna, take the production pair through the miles, and, yeah, we'll do a full review for that one.
Stoked.
Oh, another big part of gear that I know this as the race gets longer, you gotta go even more by just kind of like intuition and what's like feeling good at the time. But in terms of nutrition, like what are you gonna start with and what do you think some of like your like simple staples will be out there?
Yeah, and so I think full disclosure because we always do transparency in the show. I on the Single Track podcast I have a long term partnership with a nutrition company called NAC, and I will be using a lot of NAC products out there. I actually think in a multi day setting, NAC is a great company or
Mhm.
a type of nutrition because their whole branding is like complete nutrition. Like let's get some protein into your sort of hourly ratios. Let's moderate the grams of carbs just a little bit. Let's make sure that like gut rot doesn't become a super big issue later on. Let's get the BCAAs and their stuff like that. So I'm probably going to use a lot of their ultra energy drink mix in the first 8 hours. Might do some of their purees, might do some of their waffles, but I think primarily I'm going to go liquid based because I'm just thinking the combination of the heat, the need to get in a lot of liquid to begin with to kind of stay on top of hydration. I'll probably do liquid calories. And then honestly, I think things open up after 8 hours. I'll probably always have that ultra energy drink mix in one of my bottles, but I'm going to be going slow enough where uh, I don't need to do fast nutrition. I can probably
Mhm.
eat a lot of pizza. I can eat a lot of eggs. I can eat a lot of potatoes. I can graze off aid station tables. My, I mean, my crew could go to the local Whole Foods in Sedona and get me like a hot bar box. And
Yeah.
if I want like
Yep.
a slab of meatloaf and some sweet potato, like great. I think anything goes. I do think the one thing that will change knack wise, especially in the second half and at night, they have this product called salted soup bouillon, which if you heat it up is awesome. It kind of tastes like super savory, like a chicken broth, which I love that taste.
But it's
So
just a little more calorie dense
and
than
it's a little bit
normal
more
chicken
calorie dense
broth, right?
too, so I'll probably switch to that. But, yeah, I mean, I mean, if you're winning this race, you're running tops like 4.5 miles an hour, and even then, that's probably fast, like elapsed time
Yeah.
averages. So, I just think the stomach is gonna cooperate. Like, I'm not gonna be dealing with nausea that much. I'm not gonna be dealing with, palate fatigue 'cause there's probably gonna be some diversity. So, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, one thing that we do know is that Cocodona might be the most, like, well-stocked and, like, gourmet aid station fare from any race in the world,
Yeah.
potentially. I mean, if you go look, I'll link to the runner's manual. I mean, I think it's, like, 40 or 50 pages long, but it is super fascinating to page through, but they have a full, like, multiple pages of the menu because every aid station has a specialty, like, we're talking, like, pulled pork
Oh, yeah.
sliders,
Oh, yeah.
3 different types of pasta, I think your mashed potatoes, your meatloaf, quesadillas, like, it's gourmet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be one of the things that I'm like, that I would be looking forward to getting to, some pretty primo dining out there at some of the aid stations.
Yeah, and, just for people that end up watching the live stream, many of these aid stations go over the top in a great way. One of them is at Fain Ranch, which is mile 97. That aid station is sponsored by Satisfy Running, and in addition to sort of their apparel presentation that happens, they do a great job at just putting some funky stuff on the food tables.
I mean, that was where Flota debuted last year, the famous Flota.
Yeah, so Flota will be a part of the rotation for sure.
Oh, 100%.
I will definitely be putting down cans of Flota.
Yeah, like, I would just, like, put the like, I know you could pour them into a soft bottle, but, like, not just, like, throw them in the soft bottle pockets.
One other thing I was gonna tell you, I think I'm primarily gonna ingest caffeine through pills. So I think the
Oh,
big
yeah.
thing that I have not done in the past that I'm gonna experiment with this time around is I'm gonna do caffeine pills.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never, like, done anything long enough where caffeine's been, like, a huge issue, so curious to see how that goes. I mean, there will be a follow-up episode
Yeah.
after Cocodona for sure.
Yeah.
Um, it'll either be a full, like, interview on Single Track Podcast, or we'll do a post gear on Conversational Pace channel. I think I've 2 more things. One, what watch and, how are you gonna keep it alive?
So Koros Verdicts, this is I guess the 2 just came out. I have the 1 here. It has something like I think 40 hours of battery life on full GPS mode. I think one of the coolest value props of these Koros products is they charge pretty fast. Like I can put this into the wall behind me on 8% at 1:46 p.m. and 20 minutes later it's already added 40% charge. So I'm not too worried about recharging. I think anytime I stop at an aid station with crew, we might just take it off and
Yeah.
throw it on an outlet and make it go. I think that'll be great. For settings, I kind of thought about this beforehand because I think sometimes these things can kind of mentally mess with you if you don't pick the right ones. The ones that I respond to the best are just general mileage, vert, time on feet. I almost bought that new Koros wrist arm
Mm,
based
mhm.
heart rate strap because I thought, Gelfi always talked about like keeping your heart rate under 140 on any of these like longer 100-mile plus efforts. Uh, it was too late for me. Like by the time they came in stock again, it was too late to get one and kind of test. So that's out of the kind of contention. It's also got really cool map features. So offline mapping, and there's like the landscape topo hybrid modes. I'll probably do the hybrid mode. So I'll
Mhm.
kind of toggle between that map and then those stats. And yeah, I mean, it got me through the 100-mile wilderness last year with like 40% battery left. Yeah, Koros is known for their battery power, right? Like I think
Yeah.
Garmin might have a leg up on some, practical features in terms of data collection, but I love Koros for their battery.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanna see one single GPS track, of the
I
whole
think we're gonna
thing,
get it.
so I'm all for recharging when you see your crew because I just wanna see that watch, like, just keep it running. I just wanna
Right.
see one big track. I don't wanna see Cocodona in pieces. Um, what are you rocking for lighting I know, you're gonna go through multiple nights, so, having lumens is important.
Yep. So you and I were both at TRE this year, and I actually made friends with Ultraspire. It was me reaching out, not vice versa. Like I was truly like, they're a Utah-based company, St. George, just kind of
Mhm.
wanted to make friends. And this, I don't think it's on the market yet, but this is called the Ultraspire Solstice Waist Light. It's 800 lumens. I don't have more specs than that because their contact there. I just didn't ask for it, but came across it at TRE. It was on display. Got on the testing list, have been using it, actually used it on a couple night runs, which is great. I think that the cool thing about this is that it has like that area lighting capability as opposed to a single spot. And I think
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, it was something like 120 or 130-degree span of light pattern, which is awesome. So I'll use this. And then I also have a backup 600 lumen Ultraspire waist light, and then another company called Kogalla, which I used on the
Mm.
100-mile wilderness last year. They have this product called the RA single pack that's also 800 lumens, similar degree span of light pattern, area based lighting. I just love that. So those are backups.
So you're going, like, body-based lighting as opposed to headlamps.
Yeah, for some reason when it's almost like, well, I have the same issue on my waist. If something is tied too tight to my waist, particularly waist belts, so not
Mhm.
necessarily like this type of waist belt, but like the stuff that you put your phone and nutrition and like bottles in, I get some cinching on the gut and it causes GI issues. But so there was kind of a trade-off, but the pain, like sort of like the headache that I get from wearing a headlamp is more problematic than potential like GI distress or like constriction on the intestines. So I just kind of picked the lesser of two evils, and I
Yeah.
think I'll prefer the waist light.
Yeah. Plus, like, also, I guess the thing to consider is, like, you're not running, like, 6-minute pace down a mountain, It's like it's funny how much less of a throw you need when you're going 15-minute pace versus
Yep.
7-minute pace. Definitely, like, I think 800 lumens, like, the brighter the better for sure, but, like, I think I agree in that having, like, a big floodlight to just be able to see really wide, cast some good shadows. That's been the whole basis of Ultraspire's, waist lights is the lower beam, kind of like your, like, I don't know, like your fog light sort of thing. It casts longer shadows over the rocks in front of you, so you get a
Yep.
little bit more like 3D pop of the terrain, which I think that's gonna be one of the most important things during the night is, like, limiting the amount of rocks you kick and, like,
Yep.
stumbles you take. And, one of the big things too is, like, they can put bigger batteries on a waist light because it's not mounted to your head, so, you don't
Yep.
have to deal with nearly as many batteries. Is there any other
Well, yeah,
pieces?
I can give
What
you
do you got?
some miscellaneous stuff. So
Yeah.
I will do one drop bag, and the one place where I'll do a drop bag is at Crown King. Most of this race, it's very easy to crew because it's all based off of I-17, very similar to Black Canyon. But Crown King is kind of a hike. It's an hour-long drive for the crew from the Bumblebee aid station. And so there is a small chance that something could happen. They could get a flat tire on that Jeep road. They could just get backed up and not make it. So in the event that disaster happens and they're not there, I'll have a drop bag that has all my night gear, and I can just kind of transition stuff out. The other thing I'll mention, because I didn't mention the brand I was using for clothes. I'm using mostly Gorewear products. They're sort of an
Hmm.
offshoot of the Gore-Tex family.
Yeah.
Came across them recently. Yeah, mostly head to toe Gorewear. So they've got this R5 short that I'm using. They've got some really good like weatherproof ultra light rain gear slash cold weather gear that I'm going to use. So mostly head to toe in their stuff. And then should we talk crew and pacers to finish up?
Yeah, I was just to say, like, yeah, shout out your crew, and then my question was, who if you are having pacers, who's gonna spend some time with you out there on the trail?
So, my crew chief is my wife, Julia. She goes by Jules Campanelli, and they always say, "Marry somebody better than you." I totally did. As you know, Brett, I'm not the most logistical person. Sometimes planning is tough for me. I'm more of like a
What? No
marketing,
way.
sales, vision type guy.
Really?
Like I'm not a logistics guy. I'm really not. And she is like she's a planner. She is able to look into the future and make decisions based on that, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, this race was made for her brain. Very excited that she's the crew chief. I have my brother Ned coming out and my cousin Jeremiah. Uh, they're just good. I think they don't really have much experience. Neddy, my brother Ned, actually crewed me at my best race result ever, the 2018 GDR. So he's kind of like a
Okay.
good luck charm.
Okay.
But neither of them bring much experience other than that they're just a good time, and I want to be around a good time, so they're there. And then the two people that bring like true ultra running expertise, Caleb Olson and
Oh,
Joey Campanelli.
Caleb's crewing for you, huh?
Caleb's going to be there, and
Damn.
then Joey Campanelli. And I'll talk more about them as pacers in a second. The last person is Scott Hickenlooper, who does a lot of like Swiss Army knife video photo stuff for single track. He's actually going to be with us documenting the race live. So we,
Mm.
we have this plan to do basically photos and like a somewhat basic reel. Like it could just be like a single shot of video from the iPhone and upload that stuff to the Run Single Track channel on Instagram. So he'll be there documenting the whole thing from start to finish. So for people that want to watch the live stream, but also want more personal updates, he's doing all that. But yeah, coming into like the pacer conversation, I picked Caleb. For those that are tapped into ultra running, he is of Nike ilk. He's a very, very, very strong mountain ultra trail runner. I picked Caleb because he doesn't have much tolerance or empathy for low points because he's just so tough in his own races. So the value he brings is the motivation and the inspiration to get on his level. He's going to do about 20 miles with me in a single push because I just felt guilty. He's training for states. I don't want to ask too much of him in a pretty key week for that build. The workhorse of this pacer group is going to be Joey Campanelli. He's going to do about 80 miles with me in two pushes. For those that don't know, Joey is one of the greatest multi-day athletes of all time. He has the southbound Appalachian Trail unsupported record. He has the Nolan's unsupported record, Nolan's 14. He has the fastest Mexican border to Northern California push on the PCT
Mm.
back in 2015. Like he's just a monster in this
Wow.
stuff. And
Okay.
so I met Joey back in 2014 when I was on the Appalachian Trail. He's actually the reason I even got into trail running in the first place. So uh, it's just an honor to have him there. And then I think overall for the crew, the biggest responsibility is just getting me out of aid stations as fast as possible, except for the sleep ones. I'm going to sleep at either Fain Ranch or Mingus Mountain the first night. That's 97 or 110 mileage. I think I'll sleep again at Munns Park around mile 190 if things are good. Might do some smaller dirt naps, but like their job
Mhm.
is just we are treating this race, even though it's multi-day, even though it's 250, we are treating this race like it's a NASCAR crew pit and that so much wasted time happens in aid stations. So we are not going to be lackadaisical. We're not going to let me have a pity party. We're just pushing me out.
Yep. Sweet. I love that. Shoot, man. And yeah, for anyone who's now heavily invested in Finn's Cocodona journey, they will be able to watch like pretty damn near wall to wall coverage of the live stream. I think last year the stream was going for 18 to 20 hours per day for 5 days, 6 days. Um,
Best week ever.
yeah, super fun. Yeah, there's a lot of time. And I know so many people might be thinking, like, dude, that sounds like the most boring thing ever. You get to learn about the runners in the race way more than some shorter races. And then all of a sudden, you just become like so invested in like the dentist who runs 20 miles a week, but then like three times in the last, couple months, they just banged out like a solo, like 90-mile day. Like it's just weird things like that. Which we were talking a little bit offline too. Is like no one still really knows how to train for these 200-mile races. So it'll be very exciting to follow along and just see this journey. And I can't wait to chat with you afterwards to see, to share exchange some war stories and see how your point of view from out there I don't know, meshes with the with what we saw in the live stream.
Dude, maybe we'll chat during. It's such a long race. There's so much internet or cell phone coverage on the course. Maybe I'll just give you a call.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, give me a call. Leave me a voice memo being like, dude, the Genesis is still the greatest shoe ever. But yeah, dude, thanks for this episode. We wish you the best of luck, and I will publish this as soon as possible so people have lots of time to like shop the look.
It was an honor.